Cowboy went hunting for Christmas, but brought home an Apache woman. Not so strong, she said. The snow had been falling for days, covering the wide-open plains in a soft white blanket. The cold air bit at the cowboy's cheeks as he stepped out of his small wooden cabin. His boots crunched against the snow, and he pulled his coat tighter around his broad shoulders. This was Christmas week. But he didn't feel like joining any big-town celebrations. For him, Christmas was quiet, simple, and spent alone with the land he loved. Still, he wanted something special this year, a feast to celebrate the season, something that would make him proud. He was a man of the land, born and raised on this ranch that stretched for miles. The cattle grazed nearby, their breaths rising in small clouds into the cold winter air. He had worked hard all year, repairing fences, feeding the animals, and keeping the ranch running. Yet something in him wanted more than work this Christmas. He wanted the thrill of a hunt, the satisfaction of bringing home a prize. That thought made him smile under his frosted mustache. Maybe this year I'll find the biggest buck yet, he muttered to himself, adjusting the strap of his rifle across his back. He had spent many winters hunting, and he considered himself skilled. He knew the forests and plains better than most. Every track in the snow told him a story, and he could follow them with his eyes closed. Ask. Yet today felt different. The air seemed quieter than usual, as if the land itself was waiting for something to happen. The cowboy walked through the snow-covered trees, boots sinking slightly with each step. His breath formed small clouds in the icy air, and the only sounds were the wind brushing through the branches and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. Hunting in winter was never easy, and he knew the forest could hide surprises. He was alert, eyes scanning every shadow, every movement, but he didn't expect anything unusual. He expected the usual tracks, the usual sounds, the usual thrill of the chase. Brash. Hours passed as he moved deeper into the forest. He paused now and then to examine tracks in the snow. A deer had passed this way, he could tell, but it wasn't a big one. He frowned, wishing for a larger prize. Hunting wasn't just about food. It was about pride, about proving to oneself that one could survive, thrive, and master the wilderness. He adjusted his rifle, checking the sights, listening carefully. Every sound could mean the difference between success and failure. Then he heard it, a soft, unusual rustling, not like the movement of deer or rabbits. His eyes narrowed, and he crouched behind a snow-covered bush. The sound came again, closer this time. He could see movement among the trees. It was not an animal. Something about it made him pause. He had lived in these woods his entire life, yet he had never heard anything like this. Curiosity mixed with caution as he moved quietly toward the sound.
Finally, he saw her.
She stood among the trees, small but firm, with dark hair that fell loosely around her shoulders. Her eyes were sharp, alert, and intelligent. She moved with a confidence that made the cowboy freeze in surprise. She wasn't frightened of the snow, of the cold, or even of him, but she seemed completely at home in this wild, frozen place. For a moment he simply watched, unsure of what to do. He had hunted deer, foxes, and even the occasional wild boar, but he had never encountered anyone like her. She noticed him then and stopped. For a moment the world seemed still. The snow fell softly around them, and the cowboy felt a mix of caution and fascination. He wanted to speak, but words failed him. She stepped forward slightly, and he noticed how light and strong her movements were. She carried herself with a grace and power that seemed almost natural in this harsh environment. "Who are you?" he finally asked, his voice low and rough from the cold.
I could ask you the same, she replied calmly, her voice carrying a tone of both curiosity and authority.
"You're far from home, stranger." The cowboy scratched the back of his head, feeling slightly embarrassed. He was used to being in control, used to being the one who understood the forest.
Yet here, in front of her, he felt unsure. "Name's Cole," he said simply. "Bye. I live nearby. You, blithe out here alone?" She gave a small smile, but it wasn't a welcoming one.
I do what I must, she said.
"This forest is my home, and it keeps me safe. You should be careful here, Britt. The woods are not always kind to visitors." Cole's pride swelled a little, but he tried not to show it. He was a strong man, skilled with his rifle and with life on the ranch. Yet, watching her, he realized that strength came in more ways than he had imagined. Breath. She didn't carry a rifle. She didn't wear heavy coats or boots. She had only what she needed, moving easily through the snow, her eyes always alert, always measuring. He decided to speak again. "I'm out hunting for Christmas," he said, "trying to find something for a good feast. What about you? Don't you get hungry?" Her laugh was soft, almost musical, but with an edge that made him straighten up. "I eat what I need," she said. "Hunting is not just about killing. It is about knowing, surviving, respecting. Maybe you will learn that someday." Cole felt a sting at her words. He was used to being strong, used to believing he could handle anything the wilderness threw at him. But somehow she made him feel ordinary. He frowned, but at the same time he was intrigued. There was something about her confidence, her independence, that drew him in. He had not met someone like her before, and he felt a spark of curiosity he couldn't ignore. For a long moment, they simply watched each other, two figures in the snowy forest. The cold wind swirled around them, carrying the scent of pine and the faint smoke of distant cabins. Cole realized that this encounter was unlike any hunt he had ever experienced. There was no plan here, no familiar path to follow. This was unpredictable, raw, and breath. "Alive." Finally, he spoke again, more cautiously this time. "Russ, you live out here alone in all this snow? That's impressive."
She raised an eyebrow, a small smirk appearing on her face.
"Not so impressive, really," she said. "It is life. You would do the same if you had no other choice." Ah! Her words made him pause. She was right, of course. Survival required more than strength with a rifle or muscles. It required skill, observation, patience, and courage. And in that moment, Cole understood that this Christmas hunt was no longer about a deer or a feast. It was about something different, something unexpected, something challenging. As the sun dipped low in the sky, painting the snow in shades of orange and gold, Cole realized he would remember this day for the rest of his life. He had ventured into the forest seeking pride and victory, but he had found something else entirely. A person who could challenge him, teach him, and perhaps even change him. He adjusted his rifle, not to hunt, but almost as a gesture of respect. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the snow falling softly around them. For the first time in many years, Cole felt that Christmas might bring something more than a simple feast. It might bring an adventure he had never imagined, and it might start with a woman who was far braver, smarter, and stronger than he had ever met. With that thought, he turned to leave, but he knew that this was only the beginning. The forest had a story to tell, and somehow it had led him to her. He could feel it in the crisp air, and the soft crunch of snow beneath his boots, and the quiet strength that radiated from her presence. This Christmas hunt, he realized, would be nothing like any other. The forest seemed quieter now, but it wasn't silence he had ever known. The wind whispered through the trees, and snowflakes drifted lazily from the sky. Cole, the cowboy, walked carefully through the powdery snow, keeping his eyes on the Apache woman who had surprised him earlier. She moved with such confidence and skill that it almost seemed as if the forest bent around her. Every step was deliberate, graceful, and precise. Cole had spent years surviving here, knowing the paths, the signs, the sounds, but she seemed to know even more, as if the land itself had accepted her as one of its own. Cole wanted to speak, to learn more about her, but words felt heavy, and he wasn't sure how to start. He had never met anyone like her. She was strong, independent, and not at all intimidated by him. Normally, people he met on the plains either respected his strength or feared it. But she just smiled slightly, a knowing smile, and walked through the snow as if he weren't even there. Finally, he broke the silence. "I've been hunting all my life, and I thought I knew this forest, but you, miss, you move like you belong here." She turned her head slightly, one eyebrow raised, her dark eyes sharp. "I do belong," she said simply. "I know these woods better than most people know their homes." Bye.
You are the visitor here, cowboy. You are not prepared for what you might find.
Cole chuckled, a little awkwardly.
He was used to being the confident one, the one who knew survival, but something about her words and her presence made him feel uncertain.
"Brown," he said, trying to sound casual. "I can learn. I'm a fast learner." "Is that so?" she asked, her lips curling into a small, playful smile. "We shall see." Her voice carried authority without arrogance, and for the first time Cole realized that strength didn't always mean muscles or a rifle. Breath. Strength could be quiet, patient, and smart. She moved to a small stream, crouched, and gathered water without spilling a drop. Then she found small roots and berries hidden under the snow, gathering food with skill and ease. Cole watched in awe. He had always hunted for big game, proud of his marksmanship and endurance. But she survived using her mind, her knowledge of the land and her instincts. Breath. Curiosity began to take over. "Where do you live?" he asked cautiously. "Do you have a cabin out here or a family nearby?" She shook her head. "No cabin. No family. I live where I need to live. I follow the seasons, the game, the land. The forest provides, if you know how to listen." Cole scratched his head. He had lived his whole life in a small cabin on his ranch, and he liked the predictability of it. He had fences, animals, supplies stacked neatly for winter. The thought of living without any of that, without any safety, made him shiver. But he also felt a strange admiration for it. She was free in a way he had never been. Free, yet cautious, smart, and aware. Brask. He stepped closer, testing her boundaries. "You really don't need help?" "Not even a little?" She tilted her head, smiling.
Do you mean to offer, cowboy? Well, Cole hesitated, not used to asking questions like that.
Maybe... I thought maybe you could come with me. I live nearby. You could stay warm, eat well, celebrate Christmas a little differently. She laughed softly. a sound like the wind running over the snow. But there was no malice in it, only amusement. "Celebrate Christmas?" she repeated. "You think I need to celebrate? I live, I survive, I watch the seasons change. That is my celebration." Cole felt a little foolish, but also intrigued. Breath. He had assumed she would be grateful or impressed by his offer, but instead she teased him. She was confident, and she didn't need him. That realization both challenged him and drew him in. He had met proud women before, but none like her. She didn't try to please him or depend on him. She was entirely her own person. For a moment they walked together through the forest, following a narrow path that twisted through snow-covered pines.
Cole tried to talk about hunting, about tracking deer, about the small victories he had enjoyed over the years. But she always found a way to point out something he hadn't considered, some detail he had missed.
"What? You are focused on the prize," she said once. "But the forest is not a prize. It is life. You must respect it, not conquer it. He felt a flush of embarrassment, but tried to hide it with a small smile. "I'm used to thinking I know best," he admitted. "But maybe you're right. I've never thought about it that way." Her smile softened slightly, but it still carried a spark of humor. "Good. You are learning. Not so strong after all, cowboy." Cole laughed, the sound echoing strangely in the quiet woods. He had been called many things in his life, but never "not so strong." It wasn't an insult, it was a challenge, and he liked challenges. As they moved deeper into the forest, he noticed her keen sense of observation. She could see tiny animal tracks in the snow, notice the bends of the trees, sense when the wind would change. He realized that her strength came not from muscles, but from knowledge and intuition. And yet she moved lightly, almost like she could disappear into the forest if she wanted. The afternoon sun was low now, casting long shadows across the snow. Cole realized they had wandered far from his usual hunting grounds. Ursus. Normally he would have felt uneasy, but something about her presence made him feel strangely secure. Not safe in the usual sense. He knew the wilderness could always be dangerous, but more confident that he was not completely alone in facing it.
Suddenly she stopped and held up her hand.
"Wait," she said. "Something is near." Cole froze, following her gaze. He saw nothing at first, only trees, snow, and shadows. But then a small group of deer appeared, cautious, their ears twitching. Cole instinctively raised his rifle, but she shook her head. "Do not shoot," she whispered. "Watch. Learn. They are more than just food."
Cole lowered his weapon slowly, amazed. He had always thought hunting was about the kill, about skill and marksmanship.
But watching her, he realized it could be about patience, observation, and respect. He saw her eyes track the deer, read their movements, and understand their behavior. He saw how she could live with the forest instead of against it. Hours passed as they moved through the woods. Cole tried to teach her a few tricks he knew, how to set a snare, how to track a distant animal. But she often corrected him gently, showing better ways or explaining why his approach might fail. At first, it frustrated him. He was used to being the teacher, the one with the knowledge. But slowly, he began to appreciate her perspective. She didn't belittle him, she simply showed him a better path. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, they stopped at a small clearing. She had gathered a few edible roots and berries and started a small fire with surprising speed. Cole watched in fascination as she worked. The fire crackled, casting warm light on the snow, and he felt a strange sense of camaraderie. They didn't need words for everything. Their shared presence in the forest spoke volumes. Finally, he spoke. "I never thought I'd meet someone like you out here," he admitted. "Despair. You're amazing." Bration. She laughed softly, shaking her head. Amazing. No. Practical. Bration. Careful. Patient. Those are what matter in the forest. Muscles are not enough. Cole grinned, feeling a mix of admiration and challenge. "Not so strong, then?" he teased, repeating her words from earlier. She smirked. "Not so strong," she said. And with that, she handed him a small bundle of roots she had cleaned. "Eat. You'll need energy if you want to keep up with me." Cole took the bundle, feeling a strange warmth in his chest. He had come into the forest for a hunt, for a feast, for pride. But now he realized he had found something entirely different. A companion for the woods, someone who challenged him, teased him, and yet respected him. The hunt he had planned for Christmas suddenly seemed less important than the lessons he was learning from her. As night fell and the cold deepened, Cole realized he had a choice. He could return to the cabin and his routine, or he could follow her, learn more, and see where this unexpected adventure might lead. And for the first time he felt excitement for a different kind of Christmas. Not one of trophies or feasts, but of discovery, challenge, and unexpected friendship. The forest was alive, and so were they. And Cole knew that this was only the beginning. The journey back to the ranch was slower than Cole expected. Snow had started falling more heavily, covering footprints and making the paths slippery. He had grown up navigating these lands, and yet with the Apache woman walking beside him, he realized he was no longer the most confident tracker in the woods. She moved with an easy grace, stepping over snowdrifts, sliding down slopes and balancing on frozen streams as if the snow were nothing more than a soft carpet. Cole admired her skill but also felt a pang of pride that he couldn't shake. He had spent a lifetime surviving here, and now someone else seemed to know the land better than he did. "Why don't you wear thicker boots?" he asked, his voice partly teasing, partly concerned. "It's freezing out here." She glanced at him and smirked. "These boots are enough." "You worry too much, cowboy. You rely on what you wear, not on what you know." Cole grunted, not used to being corrected. "I know what I know," he said, trying to sound firm. "And I've survived every winter out here, alone." "Don't tell me I rely on my boots." She laughed softly, the sound carrying through the forest. "Not so strong," she said lightly, echoing the words that had become a playful challenge between them. Cole shook his head, smiling despite himself. He was starting to enjoy this teasing more than he expected. By the time they reached the edge of the forest, the sun was dipping behind the hills, painting the snow in shades of pink and gold. The ranch appeared in the distance, small lights glowing warmly from the cabin windows. Cole felt a mix of relief and nervousness. Relief that he was finally back in familiar territory, nervous about how she would react to the structured world of the ranch. She had thrived in the wild, but the rules and routines of a man-made home were something else entirely. When they stepped onto the property, Cole led her to the cabin. The animals inside the pens lifted their heads, watching the two figures approach, their breath rising in little clouds into the cold air. The smell of firewood and the faint aroma of stored winter food reached her, and she paused, taking it all in.
It was different from the forest. Safe, warm, predictable, but she didn't seem frightened or impressed.
Perhaps she simply observed, her eyes sharp and curious. "This is where you live?" she asked, stepping lightly onto the porch. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge of amusement in it. "Bress, my home, warm, stocked, ready for winter."
You could stay inside? By the fire? Eat something hot?
She raised an eyebrow.
"Eat?" she asked. "You really think I need that?" "You assume much, cowboy?" Cole scratched the back of his head, unsure whether to be proud or embarrassed. She didn't seem grateful. She seemed challenging him again. But he liked it. He was used to being respected, but now he was being tested in a way he had never experienced. He opened the door, letting her step inside. The cabin was small but cozy, with a fire crackling in the hearth. He had stacked wood neatly, laid out blankets, and even hung a small wreath on the door for Christmas. He had imagined celebrating this season alone, but somehow her presence made it feel more alive, more exciting. She walked in slowly, taking in the cabin with a quiet smile. "You live simply," she said, nodding. "Practical, but predictable." The forest would laugh at this routine. Cole laughed, feeling a little defensive, but also enjoying her frankness. "Maybe so," he admitted, "but it keeps me alive." They moved into the kitchen area where he gestured toward a small table with a few prepared vegetables and bread. "Ross, eat something," he insisted. "You must be hungry after the walk." She shook her head. "I am fine," she said. "You worry too much about feeding others. You assume strength comes from eating more than needed." Cole frowned slightly, trying to argue but realizing she had a point. He had always thought survival meant stockpiling food, maintaining routines, keeping control. Burst. Yet she thrived with far less, using skill, patience, and observation. He couldn't help but admire her, even if it made him feel less confident. The evening stretched on as they settled by the fire. Cole tried to make conversation, asking about her life in the forest, her skills, and her experiences. She spoke openly, but each story carried a lesson. How to track animals, how to find water under ice, how to stay warm without heavy clothing. Cole listened intently, occasionally asking questions, but more often he simply watched, amazed at her resilience and intelligence. "Most people think hunting is just shooting," she said at one point, tossing a small stick into the fire. "But it is learning, observing, respecting." "You shoot too quickly. You act without thinking." Cole smiled wryly. "I thought I was good at this," he admitted. "Guess I have more to learn." She smirked. "Not so strong," she repeated. And Cole laughed, realizing that the playful teasing had become part of their growing connection. He didn't mind being challenged. In fact, he found it exciting, even humbling, to meet someone who could match him, outwit him, and make him reconsider his own confidence. As night fell, Cole brought out a few simple decorations, a small pine branch, a candle, a handmade ornament he had found in the attic. "It's not much," he said, "but it's tradition." Christmas at the ranch. She looked at the small display, her eyes narrowing slightly as if analyzing every detail. Pear. Then she nodded, a faint smile appearing. "Interesting," she said. You bring the forest inside your home in your own way. You try to control what you cannot control. Cole laughed. I suppose so.
But it feels right. She studied him for a moment, then added, You are not as strong as you think.
But you have heart. That counts more than strength in the woods.
Her words stayed with him. He had always measured himself by survival, skill, and pride.
But heart? That was something new, something deeper. And he realized he respected her honesty and insight more than he had respected any challenge he had faced in the forest. The night grew colder, and the fire burned low.
Cole offered her a blanket, which she accepted with a small nod. They sat together quietly, listening to the wind outside and the occasional call of distant animals.
It was a strange companionship. Two very different lives brought together in unexpected circumstances. Cole thought about the forest, the hunt, and the life he had led so far. And now he saw that life could be different, richer, and more surprising than he had imagined. At one point, she glanced at him with a playful smirk. You really think you can keep up with me? She asked. Cole raised an eyebrow, smiling back. I'll try my best, he said. But I suspect you'll win every time. Not so strong, she said again, this time with a hint of laughter in her voice. Cole shook his head, laughing too. It had become their running joke, a challenge, a sign of respect, and a bond forming between them. He realized that this Christmas, his expectations of a simple hunt and feast had changed completely. He hadn't just met someone extraordinary, he had been challenged, humbled, and intrigued. Branch, and the holiday, which he had always thought of as quiet and ordinary, suddenly seemed full of possibility. As they settled for the night, Cole thought about the days ahead. He had never imagined that someone from the forest could come to his ranch, challenge his assumptions, and change the way he saw strength and survival. And yet here she was, practical, clever, confident, and completely independent. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew that Christmas at the ranch would never be the same again. Outside, the snow continued to fall softly, blanketing the land in white. Inside, the fire flickered, casting warm light on two figures who were learning about each other, teasing each other, and slowly forming a connection built on respect, humor, and the unexpected magic of winter. Cole leaned back, watching the flames, thinking about the forest, the hunt, and the remarkable woman sitting across from him. He realized that sometimes the greatest adventures were not about the prize you set out to catch, but about the people you meet along the way. And he knew, deep in his heart, that this Christmas would be one he would never forget. The next morning the ranch woke slowly to the soft light of winter sun. Snow had fallen overnight, covering the fields in a sparkling white blanket. Cole stepped outside, taking in the quiet beauty, and noticed that the Apache woman was already awake. She was kneeling near the fence, inspecting the tracks of animals in the fresh snow. Her eyes were sharp, her hands steady, and she moved with the confidence of someone who knew exactly how to survive in the cold. Cole watched her for a moment, a smile tugging at his lips. He had expected her to sleep in, or at least be hesitant in this new environment. Instead, she had adapted quickly, already observing, already learning, already taking the land in stride. He admired her, but he also felt a familiar sense of challenge rising. She seemed to test him constantly, reminding him that strength was more than muscle or a rifle. "Good morning," he called, stepping closer.
I see you've been busy already. She glanced at him and nodded slightly.
Morning. The snow tells stories. Dravens sense patterns. I learn from them. You should try. Brash. Cole chuckled. I've been looking at snow my whole life. I know tracks. She shook her head. a playful smirk crossing her face. Not so strong. Cole laughed, shaking his head. That line had become a running joke, a reminder that she always had a way of showing him that there was more to life than pride or ego. He grabbed a small shovel and began clearing a path to the barn, thinking that maybe she would follow, but she didn't. She moved like she owned the land, gracefully balancing across slippery snow, examining the tracks of rabbits and deer alike. By mid-morning, Cole had decided that they needed to prepare for Christmas. The cabin was warm, but a proper meal, decorations, and a bit of cheer would make the day feel complete. He suggested cooking a traditional feast: roasted meat, potatoes, bread, and a simple sweet treat he had learned to make as a child. She raised an eyebrow but didn't object, observing quietly as he began organizing the ingredients. "Why do you do it this way?" she asked, finally, pointing at the piles of chopped wood and food. Cole paused.
Bast, what do you mean?
You organize everything. You prepare more than necessary. You
control what you can, because the rest is uncertain," she said. Her tone was calm, but there was an edge of amusement in her voice. Breaths. "In the forest we adapt. We take what we need, not more. You overthink." Cole frowned slightly, but he smiled too. He had expected her to help cook, to follow instructions, but instead she challenged him again. "Maybe I like overthinking," he said, shrugging. "Bah, maybe I like being ready for anything."
She shook her head, laughing softly. Maybe.
But not everything is a battle, Cowboy. As they worked, their differences became clearer. Cole liked order, control, and planning, while she thrived in improvisation, quick thinking, and instinct. When he tried to carve the meat with precise strokes, she corrected his angle, showing a quicker, more efficient method. When he fussed over the fire, she adjusted logs and kindling, making it burn brighter without smoke. Every step of preparation turned into a lesson, and every lesson carried a playful jab or a teasing comment. "Not so strong," she whispered again, as he struggled to carry a heavy pot, smiling slyly when he nearly dropped it. Cole laughed, shaking his head, and realized that this phrase had become less a criticism and more a symbol of their growing bond. She wasn't mocking him. She was teaching him humility and patience, showing him that true strength came from more than physical ability. By noon, the cabin smelled of food, and the fire warmed every corner. They set the table with what little they had, adding a few decorations Cole had brought from his attic: a small pine branch, a simple wreath, and a candle in a tin holder. The simplicity of it contrasted sharply with the forest's wildness, yet somehow it felt right. She looked at the table and nodded, approving in her quiet, understated way.
As they prepared to eat, Cole realized that Christmas was not just about food or tradition. It was about sharing, learning, and connection.
Great. He had expected a quiet day alone, celebrating the hunt and his own skills. Instead, he found himself sharing stories, skills, and laughter with someone entirely new, someone who challenged him and reminded him of what truly mattered. After the meal, they decided to explore the property. Cole showed her the barn, the fields, and the animals. Breath. She watched quietly, noting every detail, and occasionally offering advice or insight. When they reached the horses, she examined their hooves and coats, pointing out signs of health and behavior that Cole had missed. He realized that she saw the world in ways he never had.
"You notice everything," he said. "Impressed."
"I've missed so much over the years," she shrugged. "You focus too much on one thing. The forest teaches you to observe everything, all at once." They spent the afternoon working together, feeding animals, checking fences, and even stacking more wood for the coming nights. Cole noticed how her presence changed the rhythm of the ranch. Tasks that had always been tedious now carried a sense of teamwork, humor, and energy. She teased him constantly, pushing him to move faster, think sharper, and laugh more freely. And he found himself enjoying it, enjoying her company, her skill, her spirit. By late afternoon, Cole decided to teach her one of his favorite Christmas traditions, decorating the outside of the cabin with simple lights and ornaments. She watched as he climbed a ladder to hang a few bulbs and carefully placed the pine garlands. When he handed her a string of lights, she hesitated, holding it awkwardly. "Here, let me show you," he said, moving closer, around in desk. She smirked, gently shaking her head. "Dest, not so strong," she said, echoing the phrase again as she fumbled with the lights. Cole laughed, realizing that the playful teasing had become a bridge between them. They were learning from each other, challenging each other, and slowly forming a bond built on respect, humor, and shared effort. As the sun dipped behind the hills, casting long shadows over the snow, the cabin glowed warmly with lights. Inside, the fire crackled, and the smell of roasted food lingered. Cole and the Apache woman sat quietly for a moment, taking in their work, sharing the comfort of accomplishment. "You know," he said softly, "I never thought Christmas could be like this. I thought it was about a feast, a quiet night, and maybe a little music. But now, it's about more than that." She nodded slightly, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "It is about connection, about sharing, about understanding."
You learn as much from people as you do from the land, Cole smiled, feeling warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with the fire.
He realized she was right. The forest had taught him survival, pride, and skill. But she had taught him humility, patience, and the value of companionship, and he was grateful. Fast. As night fell and stars began to appear, they stepped outside for a moment, looking at the clear sky. The snow glistened in the moonlight, and the ranch was peaceful, quiet, and full of life. Cole felt a sense of contentment he had never known. He had come into the forest expecting a simple Christmas hunt, a feast to prove himself. Instead, he had found lessons, friendship, and an unexpected bond with someone extraordinary. She looked at him and smiled faintly.
You have heart, she said. Not everything can be conquered with strength.
You are learning that, finally. Cole laughed softly. I guess so. Not so strong, huh? She smirked. Just a little. Not so strong. And with that, they returned to the warmth of the cabin, carrying wood, laughter, and a sense of shared purpose. Christmas had begun in an unexpected way, full of humor, learning, and the kind of companionship that made even the harshest winter feel warm. Cole knew that this holiday would be remembered, not for the feast he had hunted, but for the lessons he had learned, and the connection he had found. The fire burned late into the night, and they shared stories of the forest, of ranch life, and of experiences that had shaped them both. The cabin, small and simple, felt alive with warmth, laughter, and curiosity. Cole realized that Christmas was no longer about him alone. It was about shared experience, growth, and unexpected friendship. As they finally settled to rest, he glanced at her, a quiet admiration in his eyes. She had challenged him, taught him, and shown him a world beyond his expectations. And he knew that the next day, the final part of this Christmas adventure, would bring even more surprises, lessons, and the kind of moments that made life unforgettable.